What is happening? What is happening? So today we're getting into something that has to do with someone called Carlos. Carlos is a cake maker. And today we're making a reference to a parallel of making bicycles like Carlos does. He makes cakes in Hoboken in New Jersey. And that was one of the first places that I saw when I first moved to New York City, long time ago, or tried to move to New York City, and I tried to move to Hoboken, and I noticed there was one interesting cake shop that was on the way to New York City every single day. It was close to the terminal when you're going across the water to New York City, and it was Carlos the cake maker, and his significant shop always had a line in terms of getting cakes, unique cakes. And why we're talking about that today is because we're paralleling bicycles, trying to develop bicycles and trying to develop sort of like a jewelry line type of a bicycle, so that in essence every single podcast sort of can stand for a different type of bicycle, because we want to have a product to be aligned with every single podcast. We have a customization aligned with the conceptualization of a custom outfitted potential product to every single podcast, because every podcast is trying to be a little bit custom, but nonetheless the purpose is to try to have like a template so that we can recreate and reproduce and 3D print the original design, so that we can project an original design and then have more or less the ability to try to reproduce and develop that as like a print-on-demand bicycle, similar to cakes. Like if they make one cake, basically, then they can make many of those same cakes if necessary. And there's like a template that is made by making the first cake, but it's also like made to order. There's like a made to order aspect at the same time. And at the same time, Carlos has cakes in stores. Like it's the famous store that's in Hoboken, New Jersey. And basically they also sell cakes like at mass scale, like a certain template cake that they sell within grocery stores, for example. So we're trying to do the same thing like with bicycles. So we're just trying to use the mindset and also develop the hypothetical bicycle today that's made out of cakes, or the cake mindset in essence, to be able to have like also a process where we have like a factory where we have people where if we can catch an order or also project developments of conceptual bicycles that are unique, interesting designs that are crazy looking, that are like resemble jewelry, for example, and that we can project that online to be able to sell it before it even exists, so to speak, that we can sell it and foreshadow selling it, and then just try to in essence get the product made after somebody orders it, because they know that we're like a customization shop, and it's similar to a cake shop because they can make custom dough, custom characters, and custom art basically out of cakes. And we're trying to do the same thing but out of bicycles. Be like the Carlos cake shop in Hoboken, New Jersey, that's very famous, and they've had TV shows revolve around it and things of this nature, but it's basically revolving around the custom cake shop for today's episode, to be able to make a custom bike out of custom cakes. So the custom bike from today is custom cakes. It's a custom cake bicycle, just as a symbology for being able to do that projection development process for bicycles, to combine bicycles with jewelry, for example, and also toys, and also like what else? Art, like the art market and like the street art market, and also like the electric scooter market, or the electric bike market if we added a battery to a bicycle. But we want to have the customization leak into other industries, for example, the ground effects flight vehicle industry as well. But we need this cake shop so that we can run through the cake customization development process of our development process to get unique bicycles made to order, just like unique cakes. Oh yeah, so that's why we're sort of projecting the cake bicycle for today's little podcast bicycle, because we want to try to make a bicycle every day, and it's almost like a reminder to not forget to do that, because sometimes I forget things all the time. So moving right along, sometimes we're going to move to a next dimension, which corresponds to sometimes taking bets with people to develop like an incentivization line to get other people to cross their own incentivization line to try to better their own lives. And sometimes you have to try to take a position where you are maybe like worse than you want to be, because you have to make a bet. And that's typically what you do in bets, is you have to give something. You have to give something away so that you can get something in return. And sometimes to get other people that you see around you to benefit from other people's benefits of themselves, if that makes sense. Like meaning like if you just want to give something to someone and you want someone to better benefit themselves, meaning like it's also improves your network, the network effect of improving somebody else that you are either connected to or friends with or whatever. If they improve themselves, then thereby they are improving you at the same time, because like the network effect makes it so if they go up, if they improve something to a certain extent, that you actually also improve too, because you are network effect improving their status, and that just like a commission, just like if you make a sale, if you make you get a commission because you improved somebody's process, you improved somebody's life, you tried to help them, you tried to bring them value, you tried to bring them a solution, a resolution, so therefore you get a commission for adding value to someone's life, and then therefore them paying money because they got value added to their world, and then therefore you get a commission. So it's similar to that, but it's not as immediate in terms of the result, if you will, and it's not necessarily incentivized by you getting a direct impact reward as like the direct conceptual resolve. It's just a matter of like reciprocal energy and pushing out fluid like spiritual finance methodology, mentality, mindsets to be able to like try to develop a reciprocal conceptual energy that can circle back to you, but it might not necessarily. You might just be helping a friend to try to improve their process. But nonetheless, typically if people can't see value, if people cannot see value to be able to try to improve their own life, typically they can't see value in your life either. Something to that effect. So like if you can see that somebody else can do something for that would be better for themselves, then you can develop an incentivization line. An incentivization line means that you want them to better themselves because you can see that they're better, they can do better than where they're at right now, and they can't see that necessarily. So if they can't see their own value, then how are they going to see your value being able to see their value, if that kind of makes sense? And what I'm saying by that is you kind of have to take a position of being maybe like worse at something than you potentially are, but this is like, and so that they can develop an incentivization line. This is almost a little hard to explain. So that they can develop an incentivization line, so that they can in essence cross their own incentivization line, you have to develop that incentivization line for them, meaning you have to incentivize them to cross the line to better themselves, for example. And so what that also means, to try to make it easier on you to try to incentivize other people to try to do this, is that if they can't see your value, if they can't see that you, like for example, if you can see their value that they can't see in themselves, then that also means that they can't see the value in you to be able to see the value in them, which means that, for example, this is sort of the thing that I'm meaning, is that you can make a bet with them for them to cross their own incentivization line, but because they can't see your value necessarily, that means you can make an easier bet on yourself, meaning that your side of the bet, to fulfill your side of the bet, to get them to cross the incentivization line, would be less necessarily to bring a negotiation to the table than if they could see your value, because if they could see your value, then they would try to hold you to a higher standard of value and cause you to need to bet more, to put more on the table, to cause them to act, to get them to cross their own incentivization line to try to better themselves, if that makes some sense. So what I'm saying is that because they can't see their own value, and then therefore they can't see your value, so therefore they will have a less of a time. They will try to, in other words, need to propose in a deal with you less. They will ask less of you to get them to perform. This isn't theoretical, this is spiritual finance theoretical. To get them to perform, to come across their own incentivization line, for you to try to get them to come across their own incentivization line to better themselves in some fashion, in some capacity, one way or another. Hopefully, it means that thing that would cause them to do that means that they want you to compromise and do something of equal value to make them feel good about crossing their own incentivization line to better their own life. And so therefore the thing that is the catalyst to get them to do that, hopefully, can just be a little bit like of a bet with you to get them, to inspire them to cross their own incentivization line. If they're having a hard time seeing value to begin with, then that means that they won't require that much value to get their engine started, to get them to cross their own incentivization line, meaning once they are inspired enough and have enough value and are given enough incentive to cross their own incentivization line, that once they cross that incentivization line, that their life will change because they're able to and willing to, they're saying they are willing to take an action if X, Y, and Z is done. If X, Y, and Z is done, if X, Y, and Z is accomplished, then they will cross that incentivization line. It also goes along the lines of saying that everybody has a price. Everybody has a price, meaning that if somebody has a price to cross their own incentivization line, because you're paying them through a bet, you're betting them, you're saying, hey, I will do this and this and this if you will do this, meaning you're betting them to cross their own incentivization line to better their life, better their business, better their process, increase statistics in their own process, in their own world, to add more value, more momentum, more fluidity, more significant impact in their own process, in their own business, in their own life. whatever metric specifically that you're trying to measure, that you can incentivize them by naming their price. What is their price? Finding out what their price is, digging with them a little bit, making a negotiation ultimately to try to add value to friends, family, people that you know, or people in your business, potentially, to just do better, to perform better, so that they have an incentivization compensation to get a compensation at the back end of that, their own sort of commission, their own format. And that's what spiritual finance is it's not necessarily just money. It's whatever that they dig for, it's whatever that they live for, it's whatever that they are fueled by, potentially, to be able to just try to incentivize or develop an incentivization line to see what it is, whatever equals their movement, their motion, their action, to try to develop that bet. What is the bet? What would cause them to move across that line? And if they hypothetically moved across that line as like a sort of leader mentality, that if you get them to cross that in that line, that conceptual hypothetical line, that it will cause them to be in a new state of momentum, a new state of mentality, a new state of conceptual performance that ideally can occur because you made that bet with them. You made a bet with them of whatever it is to be able to get across that line, to be able to make steps, to potentially eventually cross that line. And you can see when they cross that line that they'll be in a different zone, a different mind zone, a different frame of reference, conceptualization, to therefore be able to perform in a different way, to have a new skill, a new tool, something like a new car. For example, if you get a new faster car, obviously you can drive faster. And that's the idea, that's the intention, is you teach them to drive the car before somehow surreptitiously getting them to sit behind the wheel of the car, which they didn't realize that they were even working towards or leaning towards until they're actually sitting behind the wheel of the car, because they were incentivized to sit behind the wheel of the car eventually through a deal of somehow leading to that eventual result of getting them to sit behind the car, which they would have always wanted to do, because who wouldn't want to sit in like a fast car, in a theoretical sense, a metaphorical fast car, not one that's dangerous and necessarily goes on a road that can be dangerous, but one that's actually just a mentality fast car that causes asset results, and you're just trying to be there for people to make bets with them, because you know what, even if you don't get anything in return, after all, sometimes it's fun to just watch people benefit, to watch people do better for themselves, to watch people improve their metrics, their performance. And making bets like that, having that as something to do with your free time for people around you to try to add value to their life, for them to add value to their life, and incentivize them through bets, peculiar betting, sports betting, even if you will. You can call it sports betting. It's a sports betting mentality, methodology, mindset, so to speak, just to add value by proposing conceptual value adding potential, step-taking deals, step-taking negotiations, step-taking bets for people to incentivize them, to spark the sportsman within them, spark the child in them, spark the childhood competition in them, friendly childhood, stuff like that, like racing bicycles, for example, when you're children. For example, children, bicycle racing, that's why we're coming full circle to bicycles again. We're coming back to full circle childhood bicycles again. And in this instance, we're going with the saying at the end of the podcast of being the worm. Being the worm, in essence, the early worm gets the bird. The early worm gets the bird, because everybody's focused on being the early bird. Everybody wants to be the bird, but if you're focused on the worm sometimes, then sometimes you're the worm, and you're playing the role for the bird to be the bird, the worm for the bird, to be able to get the worm, to be able to get the bird to get to the worm and be the early bird that's getting the worm. But you're playing the worm so that you're incentivizing them to be like role playing so that they're able to get more worms in life. And so you just sometimes need to be the early worm to get the bird. Something to that effect. That's the weird little caveat, little saying to end the podcast today, to make weird little bets, to try to incentivize people to improve and incentivize their process, which therefore might improve your own process conceptually if you're in the background, if you're in the periphery of someone's process improving, and you just happen to know them, and somehow there's just something to do with whatever that they've done that improved or enhanced their life. And then this is a methodology that you pass along to every single person that you know, conceptually every single person that you know. You have friendly competitions with people, just like when you're a kid, you're racing bicycles. Pretend you're that kid in the neighborhood and you're running around to all the other kids in the neighborhood trying to race bicycles with them, trying to get them to go faster, trying to get them to have more agility and be able to corner better on bicycle racing and things of this nature, so that you are sort of that worm that is just like a slow seeming worm, or you're playing the slow worm for all the birds to be able to try to chase you, more or less. And it's incentivizing them to do better and becoming a better bicycle rider, and then therefore becoming a better business person and becoming a better person. And you're just incentivizing them to go a little faster to be able to then increase and improve their performance to where they then are sort of like ranked in terms of how their performance ranks in terms of the world, in terms of life. Every aspect of ranking comes down to measurement after all in terms of life. So you're just trying to incentivize them by knowing that once they clear this certain mark, once they pass the incentivization line, that they're in a new league, that they've qualified for a new league. And if you're surreptitiously around to mindset methodology, conceptually race them as kids, race them as children to get them to pass this incentivization line, that surreptitiously that they've entered into a new realm and they are in a new league, and they're in a new league of measurements, in a new league of statistics, in a new league of rankings that potentially conceptually can add value to their life, their process, their business, to continue to add value to their own performance in a short-term and long-term sense, and therefore thereby, if nothing else, it can add value to your own little happiness ranking, if nothing else, because you just tried to add value to somebody's little their gaming process, their gaming ability. Yeah, and that's all for now. Thanks again, Dinky Tehc and Change for Game Studios. Bye, peace, bye.